I'm delighted to welcome the President of the NASDAQ, Adena Friedman.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is an honor to be here today. I would like to spend my few moments with you discussing the role that the capital markets, and more specifically the exchange community, has in promoting and driving sustainable, responsible global economic growth. Let's start with a broad view of the capital markets and how they serve as a source and force for sustainable growth. When the capital markets participants are managed responsibly and with the long-term interests of their clients in mind, they serve as a critical component to building stable and prosperous economy. The role of the capital markets is to fund and enable good ideas. We connect companies with investors. We empower entrepreneurship. And ultimately, we create the ability for companies to create jobs and well-being for their employees. Capital access creates a sustainable economic ecosystem by serving as the oxygen that empower companies to grow. With growing companies and growing job and wealth creation come increases in tax revenues that then enable governments to improve their nation's infrastructure and social services. As we all know, economic empowerment creates good long-term outcomes such as social progress, economic prosperity, and political stability. So what role do exchanges play in that plan? We believe that exchanges are trusted engines in the capital markets. We serve as a vital connection between investors, companies, or what we call issuers, and the government. We strongly believe that exchanges are and should be loud advocates for better markets and corporate practices. But as we all know, throughout history, it generally takes a catalyst to align all interests of often competing constituents to create positive change. While we are here today to talk about larger societal changes, I will give you an example of how a catalyst in our business created the opportunity for change and improvement. As with all major U.S. exchanges, when NASDAQ was created, we were owned by our broker-dealer members. And in the early 2000s, soon after we demutualized and broadened our ownership, but before we went public, we faced an issue about the way we closed our market every day. Having been broker-dealer owned, our market close procedure was very broker-friendly, but with the rise of index investing and the way that active institutional investors had started to benchmark their daily performance against passive indexes, the closing price had become a very important metric of price discovery in the markets. And yet our process did not result in a true reflection of price discovery at that moment in time, and investors were frustrated. Then came the catalyst. The S&P Index Group threatened to use a different exchange's closing prices in NASDAQ-listed stocks if we did not improve our closing process. That would have had a negative financial impact on our broker-dealers and their clients. While we had been proposing improvements to the broker-dealer community for over a year, rounding up competing interests had proven difficult. The catalyst changed everything. Suddenly, when we proposed a new closing auction mechanism, everyone listened. Institutional investors weighed in with constructive feedback, and the broker-dealer community, rather than fighting for the status quo as they had done, reacted to our proposal with productive suggestions. It was clear that we were working towards a common goal. And ultimately, the government regulator, the SEC, endorsed our plan, and the NASDAQ closing cross was born. That auction mechanism has served as the foundation for our open and close, as well as other auctions that we run every day. And I can feel proud that we truly did create a fairer, more transparent, and more effective market for all investors in NASDAQ stocks. So what is the lesson that I learned from that experience? Catalysts are what are needed to drive diverse interests together. So as we face larger societal challenges, what are the concrete catalysts that will drive us together to make positive change? The catalysts are the most effective, are those that are tangible and impact our daily lives. Let's take one example of critical sustainability issue that faces us all, carbon emissions. So what is the tangible impact of carbon emissions? Well, global warming and extreme weather. Well, in the absence of a Hollywood-style disaster that impacts everyone on the planet, what is the fastest way to align the interests to address those major societal issues? I think we can all agree, in some respects, that money plays a major role and can serve as a major catalyst. So using the concept of money, can the governments create effective tax incentives for consumers, manufacturers, energy companies, and financial institutions that fund the energy ecosystem to play their part in reducing carbon emissions by adopting best practices? Can we generate more and more effective evidence of that good ESG practices drive better long-term financial performance and investor returns? Studies like the 2015 University of Oxford work, as well as the Eccles and Seraphim research, are important pieces of work that make the case that sustainability practices drive better results. Using that evidence, can an increasing number of private and public, institutional and retail investors, such as the UBS clients, create an ever louder voice by demanding disclosure, best practice standards, and when appropriate, improvements before they are willing to invest their capital into those companies who can impact the global level of carbon emissions? Can exchanges then contribute by working with investors, companies, and regulators to establish those disclosure and best practices that companies should abide by to gain access to that capital? Well, one question we do ask ourselves often is, should those disclosures be mandatory or voluntary? I think our opinion is that there are certain fundamental corporate evidence of corporate behavior and disclosures of corporate behavior, financial performance, and governance that should be mandatory as listing standards to gain access to retail capital. But if we make the mandatory standards too high, it will stifle the ability for entrepreneurial companies and particularly small businesses to get access to capital to grow, create jobs, create wealth, and improve the overall economy. Therefore, it is a balance that we have to strike between mandatory and voluntary standards. But in the absence of those mandatory standards or a crisis-level climate event, we believe that the market solutions can be that catalyst with natural financial incentives, that they can be very, very effective as catalysts to align the interests and motivate change. So what are exchanges doing worldwide to establish the ESG best practices and disclosures that we can endorse and promote within each of our own economies? Well, in fact, exchanges have been coming together in unprecedented ways on this issue. Today, NASDAQ serves as a technology provider and partner to over 85 exchanges and marketplaces worldwide. And using our position, we NASDAQ co-founded the UN Sustainable Stock Exchange Initiative and founded the World Federation of Exchanges Sustainability Working Group. And together, those organizations represent 56 exchanges in 38 countries, representing 38,000 issuers with $52 trillion in market cap. And we have a shared sense of mission that are focused on three things: transparency with better corporate reporting, smarter regulation, and investor engagement; performance, raising the bar in some economies on listing standards. So for instance, the Singapore Stock Exchange just announced, it's the latest exchanges to announce, that they are introducing listing standards specifically related to sustainability. And then sustainable investment, with sustainability-related indexes and ETFs, including NASDAQ's own Green Energy Index, as well as the UN Global Impact Index, as well as other financial instruments like green bonds, as well as power markets and other areas of funding for clean energy companies. Those are all things that exchanges can do and are doing to make a difference in promoting sustainability globally. But as we know, change does not happen overnight. When it comes to ESG, it will take multiple political cycles to create lasting, sustainable change. And as we know, politicians are not the most patient people in the world. But we need to work together to create incentives that survive the next political cycle and stay true and vigilant to the cause to create a better world for tomorrow. Thank you very much.